hope you've been finding this very, very helpful, guys. We're moving into our analyzing argument now, our section C. I think at this time of the year, a lot of you guys are actually doing this area of study, so hopefully you find this super, super helpful. I recommend using this process of analysis model where we ask ourselves what, how, why. So, what is going to be our evidence? The persuasive language technique and the appropriate term for it, as well as the quote that we've chosen. Then the how link will answer how does it position the audience, what is the effect, and then why is questioning why does it support the author's argument? Why does it support it? So looking at these in more detail. So our persuasive language technique is the what. The key question to answer here is what is the author doing? What language is being used? And we have to quote. So here are examples of a few sentences with the what incorporated in pink there, kind of a pinkish red as we can see. The author makes use of overtly negative language. So that's also the meta language for our PLT, such as terrible human beings, short and concise, nice quote, to establish Chris Brown in an unfavorable light. So that last bit shows us what's been done with the language. The negative language is to make Chris Brown appear in an unfavorable light, make him look bad. By describing his actions as brawling with a crew, the author employs language reminiscent of gang violence and brutal street fights. Again, we've described the language and we've included the evidence. Or this example, the author employs language that plays to the idea of naivety and youthfulness through describing Brown as a stupid 19-year-old kid. This is where we focus on our quote, the meta language for the PLT, and describing how it works, how the language or PLT works to create a certain effect. So say if it was an appeal to family values, we would be describing how does it appeal to family values. So through the language being used, through the argument, so on and so forth. Now how? We answer how the audience is positioned. So this is the intended effect, not the actual effect. What does that mean? The intended effect is simply what effect the author is aiming to create towards their audience, how it's meant to make them feel or think. But we can't say it's the actual effect because also we don't know what the actual effect is, guys. No fence sitting, remembering to use our low modality verbs. This might suggest, this could indicate never being definitive. Never saying, the author successfully convinces audiences that avoid that kind of language. So here are some examples. How is the audience positioned? The author invites readers to consider how their support of Brown might endorse his harmful behavior, or it could be anything different. And you can sometimes do these intended effect sentences, literally stating the words intended effect, right? You can say the intended effect of this is to blah 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 blah. You can frame your sentences that way as well. So he invites them to consider how their support might endorse his harmful behavior, through which he seeks to engender a sense of fear amongst the readership of the misogynistic behavior that Brown could inflict in Australia, which seeks to marginalize readers. We don't have to go into so much detail every single time. This is a really detailed example of how we can extend upon our intended effect. Aim for at least one sentence, one short sentence like that first example. And if you can elaborate, please do boost your analysis. So this idea that it's intended, not actual effect. Our actual effect, this is not linking into our how. And we have no idea what the actual effect is. That would be that concept of fence sitting, being definitive, judging the piece, which we're not supposed to do. So how to say things in an essay and how to not say things in the essay. You can see this fence sitting here in the red. This makes the reader feel afraid. We don't know that. We can say this is intended to make readers feel afraid. At least that's what it seems the author is trying to do. We don't know if that's effective or not. Similarly, we can't say thus the reader will feel afraid. The author encourages the audience to feel afraid. We don't know if it works or not. Similarly, instead of this could perhaps make readers afraid, we might say, which is designed to elicit fear within readers. Instead of readers may feel afraid, we can say which positions readers to feel afraid. And I've already thrown around some words with may, might, similar. We can use those words to help us identify these ideas as well, making sure we're not doing fence sitting. Just a breakdown of our process of analysis as with some examples. So let's look at this example for a few different pieces of textual evidence. So our what could be describes the current election as looming over Australia to establish its immediacy. So this is our evidence and how the language is working to create a certain effect. Then our how, intended effect, intends to exacerbate existing anxieties amongst her readership on youth disengagement. And then the why does this support the author's argument? Lee suggests that with current levels of disengagement, the upcoming election is a threat or something to fear. So the author clearly has a negative standpoint on the election. Another example, the author titles her piece Voting 101 to create associations with a short course or education. How? What's the intended effect? Invites readers to view her own piece of writing as educational. And why is she doing this? How does it contribute to her argument? It furthers her assertion that civic education is the only way to conquer youth apathy, the youth not caring about these elections. Hopefully, making a lot of sense. You can see how it really might help you if you put this into practice to analyze really thoroughly and really well and lead to great ideas. So looking at why a little bit more in depth, this one's easy. It's simply we've analyzed intended effect and how the language creates a certain effect. So now we can state how this supports or contributes to the author's argument. For example, as such, the author creates a comprehensively negative image of Brown, furthering the idea that he should not be allowed into Australia. Or thus, the author seeks to inspire a unity amongst her readers to ensure they all criticize how celebrities get a free pass when it comes to misdemeanors. Or, consequently, the author seeks to reduce the importance of Brown and other celebrities in the context of the entire music scene. Really easy, probably a bit more easier to understand if you're looking at the full table where you can see the links between all of them. So if you're trying to study this and adopt this, recommend you look at this table or even try to replicate for your own analysis. Looking at some more examples to really consolidate this, let's look at this one. The author appeals to nostalgia. That's a persuasive language technique, an appeal to nostalgia, how things used to be, in order to inspire audiences to support her contention. Now, in this case, we have the what. It's the appeal to nostalgia. We could say this is done through a nostalgic tone, but we're missing the how. Inspire audiences? Where's that link? How does nostalgia support her contention? So we can talk about the why. It prompts us to reminisce the past, happy memories, etc. Mention that link. The intended effect, appealing to nostalgia, will make the audience think about the past, right? Supporting her contention. Why and how does it support her contention? So, for example, because an urge to preserve such memories. There's an urge to preserve these memories by supporting whatever the author's contention or argument is. So you can see how in this example where the how and why links are missing, the whole thing reads as if everything is missing, right? So avoid that in your own writing. Try to do the what, how, why process of analysis every single time. I really recommend it. So we've identified the ideas and now we're going to put this into writing. The author begins with a nostalgic tone, indicating that there's an appeal to nostalgia, which is designed to prompt her audience to reminisce the past and picture the happy memories of their childhood at the local park. So that second part after the nostalgic tone, that was our how, the intended effect on the audience. And then we talk about how it supports her argument. In doing so, she urges the community to see that in an attempt to preserve such memories, they should not demolish the local park. Seeing the what, how, why process of analysis put into practice, let's have a look at an upper range response. Again, it's all color coded for you. Red for the what, the evidence, green for the how or the intended effect, and blue for the why. How does it support the argument? The author's imperative language, as evidenced by his repeated use of the words must and need, remembering that repetition itself is also a persuasive language technique, and it's one that students miss, but it's great and easy to use and combine with other evidence. Use of the words must and need create a sense of urgency surrounding the public response to gang violence. This encourages readers to support his call for decisive action in the form of stricter penalties for those involved in violent acts. The author seeks to depict gang members as brawling, marauding mobs, engendering readers' disgust and contempt. In this sense, O'Malley seeks to elicit feelings of antipathy towards gang members so that the audience are more inclined to support harsher punitive measures. We can see what's really good about this response. There is amazing use of meta language. It's very fluent. It's very correct. In terms of the link between the intended effect and how it supports the argument is very, very, very clear. It's very concise. So the quotes are very, very short. We want our quotes to be under 5 words anyway. And what is chosen is very relevant. The analysis is deep, looking at our why points. The language is very, very elevated. For example, it seeks to elicit feelings of antipathy. So you know how apathy means we don't care about something. So the word antipathy means instead of not caring about something, we really dislike something, or we have a lot of contempt or hatred towards something. So here, the gang members. Harsher punitive measures. Really good use of writer does words as well. Create, encourages, support, call for action hinted at there, but not fully stated, but your examiner would get that. Depict, engendering, seeks to elicit, and support, and those are great, great effective use of meta language for verbs and what the author is trying to do. Something to aim for. You know, you can get to this level of writing through practice. You have the rest of the year to get to this level. Now, with analyzing argument, we need to have a chat about visual analysis. We need to be looking for the links between our written and our visual material, so our embedded photographs or pictures, and find a gateway. How do they relate to each other? The image supports, you know, an argument that is embedded in that part of the text. It's there for a reason. So we need to connect the argument that we've identified to the image and how the image supports that. So we will quote from the text, we'll describe what the visual is literally depicting as a whole, but then we'll zoom into the little features using appropriate terms such as foreground, background, symbols to consider the symbolic meaning of the visual. And we'll analyze it, discussing how it adds to or detracts from the writer's argument. It's only going to detract from the writer's argument if it's not embedded in the text, if it's a standalone image that is intended to be acting as a comparative material. If it's embedded within the text, generally, it's always going to relate to our argument. We'll come back in a little bit more detail to visual analysis, but that was just that's just the last thing we're going to go through. But now we're going to have a chat about section C in general and my advice for you. So you're going to have 2 pages of material every single year. It's 2 pages. Definitely some visuals likely to be embedded within your piece that you're provided. But VCAT doesn't specify. It's not necessarily just one written piece. Prepare for a comparative task in case it is. It's unlikely it hasn't happened, in years, but it could be. you know, you might not have an entire separate comparative article, but you could get something like comments presenting the opposite point of view, having a completely opposite contention, and you're going to have to analyze it as well. So the task is a test of selectivity. Don't write about every little thing you find because there are so many persuasive language techniques. Choose what's most relevant and what can be best analyzed and what contributes to the arguments you've identified the most. Analyzing language is really important, but so is the structure and flow of your essay. So this task can be very formulaic and it's often the quickest to write. You need to show your workings and explain your analysis and don't skip steps and expect the assessors to fill in the gaps. So doing the whole what, how, why process of analysis. This is the section you should absolutely start with, and because you should be spending like 10 minutes of reading time planning for this. And hopefully at the end of the year, you get to a point where you're able to finish this section within 40 to 50 minutes. It is the easiest and fastest task of the exam. So contentions, they need to include quite a bit of information for argument analysis. So I really recommend using a formula. The formula that I recommend in a descriptive word tone, offer contends that, and then write your contention. Or we have an alternative one here, which is just a little bit a little bit longer and includes all of the elements. The offer, tone word with ly attached. So, for example, sarcastically contends that the issue is a beautiful word, an adjective, hopefully for good or bad, because this is how they justify their view and therefore offer some kind of solution or action they want to be taken. If you're someone who can just use the format of in a something tone, offer contends that um, the issue is blah blah blah, and you don't have to think about those last couple of elements, do that. But if you have any of these elements missing from your contention, such as the position on the issue, the justification, or the solution, I really urge you to use this sentence frame to make sure you tick everything off. Looking at an example of how we can plan for the contention. A lot of us are feeling alone this season, even though the loneliness was supposed to end last spring. That variant after variant after variant insists on barging in to interrupt our return to normal, engenders a sense of defeat and exhaustion. About a year ago, pandemic burnout entered our vocabularies, and now we've stumbled upon the consummate burnout game. Togetherness in solitude is what we've been after throughout this crisis. What we're looking for in our video calls or group chats, our cookbook clubs, and our viral debates over the last minute mini-series or movie we watched, not because it looked good, but because everyone else was watching. Wordle allows us to win a bit of that togetherness every day, which hopefully brings our lonely hearts a bit of peace. Great ad. Very appealing. So the issue is obviously pandemic loneliness, referring back to COVID-19. The issue is described as bad. Why? Because it's been long lasting and seemingly never ending. We can also talk about how it's clearly hinting that people are very isolated and lonely. And what is the offer's goal? To bring us together through Wordle, to get more users to jump on Wordle. And obviously, it's a promotional advertisement. So, writing a contention using a contention flowchart, this includes all of the 5 steps. What's the issue? Does the author think the issue is good or bad? The vocab to describe that. What are the implications and what the author wants us to do, what their goal is. Very short, easy, and concise. Molly Roberts contends that pandemic loneliness, our issue, is taking its toll on the populace, clearly stating that it's bad, as she suggests that it can be positively curbed by the sense of togetherness with activities such as Wordle Foster. So it clearly identified the issue as the pandemic loneliness, that it was bad, used the word to describe it, and stated that instead they should be utilizing this application to bring them closer together. So here's our contention and how we can go through the entire process and plan a really good contention. Now, if you adopt this method and you practice it, this will, after you have an idea in your head, this will take you less than a minute to do. So I really recommend it. But ultimately, your task in section C is to analyze how the language, both visual and written, is used, how these specific authorial choices shape meaning and argument, and so as to position the audience in a particular way for a particular reason. The way in which it tries to position refers to our how in our what, how, why process of analysis, and the reason is the contribution it's making to how it goes to contribute to the author's argument, and that's our why. So you can see if you use the process, you are going to tick off everything that Vika wants you to do. Here's our structure. We need an introduction. An introduction should start with some contextual information, lead into our contention, our tone, which we can include as part of our contention sentence. So we do need an adjective describing the overall tone, should identify the audience and the purpose of the piece, which is also referring to what is the goal, what are they trying to do, or what solution they're trying to offer. Some other things that have to be in here. We need our text type, so the form. Is it a blog post? Is it an article? Is it something else? We need to identify the text type, the details of the publication, so the author's name, the title, where it was published, so say a website or a magazine, and the date that it was published. So overall, it's I think 8 elements that I've listed here that all introductions should have. If you miss anything, please do not miss context, contention, tone, or audience, because they're pretty key ideas that really need to be your intro. Try to remember all of them and practice incorporating all of them. So now our body paragraphs need to be idea-based, argument-based. And we cannot forget authorial intent and the reader. For example, it is Day's very suggestion of the power of ink that she urges readers of the street beat to observe the significance of tattoos, namely for their symbols of pain and suffering. We've talked through this. We know what to do. Topic sentence, and then what, how, why, what, how, why, what, how, why, over and over again. And then a final linking sentence again back to the ultimate authorial intent or effect on the reader for that body paragraph relating to our topic sentence, relating to our argument. So overarching authorial intent or intended effect statement, or both. Probably stick to one. Now, that introduction formula, here are all the things I mentioned we need to have, and we can follow it in this order. So we can go background information, so introducing the context about the issue, citing the text, date, publisher, text type, author, stating the tone and the contention in one sentence. We can add our purpose in here as well if it fits, and the target audience. For audience, just ask yourself, who would have a vested interest in the issue? We don't want you ever saying it's for Australian audience, the general public, blah, blah, blah. You need to make it more specific. Is there a particular age group involved? Is it targeting millennials? Is it targeting progressive audiences? Think what's appropriate. Who are the people of influence? Questions to help you identify audience. And if relevant, and it is a comparative task, so you have another article or a standalone visual or comments or something, you may mention the other articles and visuals, but then it has to be a standalone piece separated from the article. Alternatively, instead of doing a combined comparative style introduction, you can include this information again after you've analyzed your main article, your main text. you can write another introduction and talk about then the comparative material there. So, assuming this is a comparative task, we'll try to have 2 times body paragraphs on the biggest article, our main article. A link to an image when we're analyzing images must be in a bigger paragraph. If they're embedded in the text, we will never discuss the image devoting an entire body paragraph to the image. It should be in one body paragraph that has an argument. So it will be embedded along with other textual evidence relevant for that argument. So we see it should look like this. Our topic sentence or argument, evidence and explanation of quotes, leading into the how, leading into the why, analysis of textual evidence, the connection of evidence with an image. So find links between the evidence and how the image adds to that. Then we do the what, how, why process for the image in relation to the argument. And then we connect to the argument or the ultimate intended effect in our linking sentence. And then we'll also have one body paragraph as comparison for our other article, comments, whatever material we've been given as comparative material. And for each discussion of the second article, the smaller one, we'll try to make a small link to the main article. For example, how does author 1 argue something about the idea and what is the intended effect on the audience, compared to author 2 and what they have argued. And we'll also discuss, if hopefully we can find this, what is different in terms of authorial intent or argument of the author or intended effect on the reader, or all of these. They will have different intended effects you can find. They will have different authorial intent. And unless they completely agree with each other and the comparative material is just agreeing with what the author is saying, they will have different arguments and contentions. It depends on whether they're more different or similar, which point of view they're expressing. And then we have like one mini body paragraph, sort of a conclusion. You can call this a conclusion if you'd like, that looks at the final persuasive techniques or arguments of both pieces. Rather than just writing a conclusion after we've talked about the comparative material, it's good if you have this sort of short body paragraph before your conclusion. And it's a very comparative body paragraph. So let's look at this example and how it compares the two pieces. Upon conclusion of the power of ink, Day returns to the discrepancy between modern and traditional tattooing and their symbolism. As Day scornfully laments the shift of tattoos from reckless to try-hard, social beat readers are conclusively positioned to condemn the commodification of tattoos. And differentiated from any cosmetic quirk, Day prompts readers to criticize tattoos as an ordinary ornament and share in her regret at their diminished uniqueness. So you can see how the previous body paragraph was more focused on, in general, introducing the material of the comparative piece with some comparative links between the two, whereas this one draws those bigger comparative links between both of them. This is not the exact structure you have to follow, though. It is really flexible when it comes to comparative structures. If we have just one piece of material and there's no comparative material, you should really just be following the standard introduction structure, argument, what, how, why, several times per body paragraph, linking sentence, and do that for your entire essay. And our conclusions will be similar. They will restate our contention and elaborate on it and make an overarching statement as to intended effect or authorial intent. If you find something easier that you apply in school, use that instead for your comparative structures. We want to look for subtle PLTs because these are likely to get us, marks for that complex analysis. So connotations, negative and positive connotations attached to language, remembering to quote for this as well. Prolepsis, how the argument is framed, sentence structures, high and low modality, parallels and associations we can infer, drawing on common knowledge, juxtapositions, things that are put side by side that are opposites or very different from each other. Tonal shifts are key. Tonal shifts are key. Make sure you quote when you talk about a tonal shift as well, and that you never mention tonal shift in a topic sentence. It is another piece of evidence to discuss in a body paragraph. Identify a strong word that describes the tone, quote, and discuss what effect the tonal shift creates. Going back to visual analysis, remembering the slide that I've already talked us through, we need to find the symbolic meaning in the visual after discussing what it's literally depicting and how this adds or is different from the argument of the author. Here are some things we can analyze in a visual: symbolism, size, juxtaposition, contrasting things, right? Labels, facial expressions, speech and speech bubbles, background information, link between visual and written text. So much ideas, and this is not a full list by, not at all, guys. But we're going to look at an example. And this is an example of a cartoon. So a good way to consider the symbolic meaning of a visual is to remember that different visuals have different conventions and what they are. So what do we see in a cartoon? Look at the style. The style is very distinct. It's obviously a pencil drawing. That's what a cartoon is. Tends to have some kind of writing. This does appear to be some sort of promotional, potentially slogan as well. And this is from the 2015 VCA exam, this example that we're looking at. So this was actually on the exam, guys. How would you analyze this? It says, dig for victory, for their sake, grow your own vegetables. We're gonna try to talk about this. The community garden movement is no passing fashion. So we're gonna try to link in our visual, in our body paragraph. That's why we're opening up like this. Imagine this is inside the body paragraph. During the Second World War, everyone in Britain was urged to dig for victory. We've brought in the visual by stating the title, by growing vegetables in every bit of spare land. So we've done this idea of link between visual and written text and background information here. Backwards, and nature strips were dug up in the struggle to keep families fed. So we can mention in the background that those families are depicted to emphasize, that idea of that they struggle to be kept fed because because of that garden movement. Growing vegetables in every bit of spare land. Obviously, the ground, after being used and exhausted so much, it's not able to adequately produce vegetables and fruit anymore. If that happens, that's how it works. It's not fertilized enough. In the crisis of war, people suddenly understood how vulnerable a society is if we have forgotten or never learned how to produce our own food. And this is how we're linking it back to our main argument. So we can see this here. This is our struggle to keep families fed. We have the imagery of the families in the background that were previously very happy, very well fed, but now we're stomping on this ground, we're over planting, over harvesting it, and it's losing its effectiveness to produce food. So that idea, symbol of that shoe and shovel, of the foot pressing down on the shovel, and that idea of their sake, it's an appeal to family values, keeping our families alive and well fed and happy. All of the types of things we could have identified. And the shoe is in the foreground and the families are in the background, if we want more meta language terms. You can see it's not a difficult process, guys. So here we can see those ideas: patriotism, children present, family values, appeal to family values. The boot on the shovel signifies or symbolizes strength and hard work for their sake, referring to the vulnerability of children and their reliance on others' contribution and hard work. They need to be taken care of. We need to be part of this garden movement to help to ensure that we can support the children which are vulnerable. So overall, section C, we're pretty much finished. The summary is that it's going to be one article with at least one visual, and it may have comments as well that are going to be your comparative aspect. It's going to be about 2 pages. You should write about 750 words. It's going to be shorter than your other essays, shorter body paragraphs as well, most likely, quick and fast, easy flow of writing. Once you have enough practice, it will get easier, I promise. But the criteria we already had a chat about. You can see it repeated here. And generally, because it's so formulaic and we can just do what, how, why, what, how, why. If we're used to the process, we can do it just like that, and it's going to be so quick and easy to do. Very formulaic. Instead of using our inappropriate, informal / vague terms, show, says, makes, here is a huge list of different writer does words we can use, guys, different verbs we can use. If you would like, draw on this list, define any if they are confusing to you, or ask me in the chat as we're going through to define any, and put this in your notes. Common mistakes in this section: analysis that lists techniques, try to avoid that. Empty analysis that's just textbook phrases or definitions describing general effects of PLTs, rather than injecting relevance and specificity by considering the material in light of the issue, argument, and audience, and making this analysis and the intended effect very specific to the material you've been given. Paraphrasing what the author is saying rather than actually saying what the author is doing, how their language is being used, and why. And to avoid all of these, we just need to link back every piece of evidence to argument and contention, and following that what, how, why method that we've introduced. Now here, want to have a chat about what we can do beyond practice essays for section C. Huge one, working on our vocabulary. Create notes and banks and study PLTs and language devices, verbs to describe what the author is doing, words to describe tone, words to describe intended effect, and words to avoid. You've pretty much gotten all of that from this lesson. So spend a lot of time studying and working with this material, and you should be all set. You might need some extra work outside of this. Maybe yes, maybe no. Lists of do's and don'ts. Use feedback you've accumulated from throughout the year. Try to rewrite body paragraphs, rewrite essays. Keep a note of all the feedback you've received and constantly work to improve. Look at the examiner's reports, review criteria and their advice, and review exemplar high-scoring responses. And complete close analysis exercises. Choose a short article or comment and just write a body paragraph or 2. Practice writing introductions as well if you struggle with them, or you fail to include some of the elements that we've listed. There's 8 elements, so it's quite a lot. Even practicing writing contentions can be very useful, or practicing planning time, using your time, giving yourself 10 minutes to come up with contention, evidence that I want to use, and free arguments. Now, we're finished with section C, guys. These are just we're going to go through quickly some general advice I have for you for English. Annotate your text. Active reading and annotating your text. As you read, think that everything you read or watch has been deliberately constructed by the author for a particular purpose. So question the necessity of everything. Ask yourself why. It helps to prevent summary. It will differentiate you from the rest of the state, which is really important for doing well this year. You will be set for your analysis, and you will find it very, very easy and have a lot of ideas and positions on your text. So look for important moments of plot, vocabulary that you don't understand, unique evidence for characters and character development, connecting your writing to views and values of the author, and literary devices, so that you have that range of evidence and you're also prepared for structural prompts. And then have notes or annotations or both and quotes organized by different themes, ideas, and characters relevant to your text, so that you're organized and on top of all of them. You are prepared for anything on the exam, any type of prompt. Same for your SACs. You have a range of evidence. and you won't have to memorize and rote learn all of your quotes if you're prepared and you do this early enough in the year, and then you have those resources that you can work with. Again, avoid summary, use nominalization, um, make sure that you're not summarizing, so rephrasing evidence from the text in your own words. Make sure you instead analyze by interpreting the evidence and saying how it's significant. Don't write essays aimlessly. Every essay or paragraph you write should have a purpose to improve something, to get used to the structure, to get feedback, so on and so forth. Test out new ideas, experiment leading up to your SACs, including trying to elevate your vocabulary and put some fancy words in there. See if you can improve your writing. See if you can improve your sentence structure. There's, such a huge range of things you can try to get better at and experiment with. Choose deliberately easy and difficult prompts to test different skills. Easy prompts for improving writing skill and improving analysis if you struggle with analysis. Difficult prompts to challenge yourself. Not saying you're not going to get difficult prompts on the exam. Chances are you might. Chances are even both of your prompts for one text could be ones that kind of stress you out when you initially see them. So work on that skill. Don't get stuck in habitual activities that are have limited use. Instead, try to practice honing a range of your skills for English. Pinpoint all of your weaknesses, get good feedback, keep track of feedback, and target improvement. And a key strategy is rewrite things that you've not written well after you've gotten feedback. So, for example, target improvement, I can't write good topic sentences. Work on that. Research examples of topic sentences and how the process works. Seek out resources, seek out your teacher, do exercises where you're literally just planning for an essay and planning your contention and topic sentences, and do it until you feel you get better. And again, some examples of issues, all issues that can be fixed. And if you find it impossible to fix them, that's the place where you need to consider, do I need additional help? Do I actually need some tutoring help or other help with English that I need to seek out because it's still not working for me? I'm really struggling. If you feel that way and you've really tried, chances are you could benefit from additional help. But try to work on these things by yourself. Target improvement working with yourself, knowing what you need to do, setting purposeful tasks, and working with your teacher and getting feedback. Otherwise, beyond essays, read analyses of text, read your past essays, see how far you've come, what are things you did well, and what are things you didn't do so well. Doing detailed essay plans, give yourself a lot of time to plan for an essay and see how far you can develop your ideas, how good they can be. Work on analyzing quotes. Just as an exercise, you can try to analyze quotes in 1 to 2 sentences. Do mini analyses of separate quotes, and you can use this for your notes as well. Practice writing topic sentences and contentions. Write introductions, body paragraphs, depending on what you struggle with. Potentially even conclusions. If you struggle with conclusions, write conclusions. Write your own essay questions, craft your own prompts, mark your own work and other people's work. Have conversations about your text with students and your teacher to get more ideas and develop strong positions about your text. And rewrite essays or parts of an essay that you have written where you've gotten the feedback on what needs to be improved.